good people of the world. You are listening and watching to Mondopreneur podcast. Mondopreneur means entrepreneur of the world, and our main aim and main goal is to share as much as we can stories of successful persons that come from all over the world. This whole project is supported by U.S. Embassy in Belgrade in Serbia, and today I have a very interesting guest. Well, I'm super excited that he actually agreed to participate in this project. His name is Gorjan Jovanovski, and he comes from Skopje, from Macedonia. And I think that maybe you don't know how he looks like, or maybe you haven't heard about him before, but you definitely heard about AirCare. AirCare is an app that most of my friends use. He's going to tell us something more about that. So this is just a small sneak peek into what you can expect from this conversation. I hope that you're going to enjoy. I'm going to enjoy so much. So, hi, Gorjan, how are you?
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for the invite. I honestly really appreciate it, and I would love to chat around. And I'm great. It's a Monday morning. We have sun here in Skopje, which is good. We can at least get some vitamin D on our skin. So I'm super happy.
Oh, fine. I had a pause between two shootings, and we actually went to the rooftop just to, as you said, absorb a little bit of vitamin D. Can you tell us something about yourself? I usually ask my guests to tell us something like what is their educational background? Do they have any interesting hobbies or interests that are important for their today's work and today's job, and how your education correlates to what you are doing right now?
So usually when I introduce myself, I say that I'm a software engineer by trade, and I'm an eco-activist by heart. And I kind of combine those two passions to do what I do today. I loved computers since I was a kid. I remember in 7th grade, I discovered a computer magazine which had some visual basic programming language, very old. And I started teaching myself how to program from a magazine. And fast forward a couple of decades, and we're here now working with these big projects. But yes, I finished software engineering bachelor's degree here in Skopje. I did my master's degree again in software engineering in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. Continued to work there a little bit for Booking.com. As a software engineer and a team manager. But then after, I think, 4 years in the Netherlands, I decided that I want to move back here. And I want to focus full-time on AirCare because as an eco-activist throughout the years, I've realized, hey, I think I have the opportunity to make a bigger impact, and I will seize it to the fullest extent that I can.
So how did you become an eco-activist? Did you have any personal issue, or did you find that problem in society? What was your or how were you driven to become eco-activist?
I think if I go way back when I was a kid, I think there were two things that really made me kind of see the problems that we have, especially locally here. I used to live in the States for a little bit. I moved there with my family, and I got to see a cleaner, greener, let's say, environment than what I was seeing on the streets of Skopje, and kind of awoke a little bit on a side of me saying, hey, there might be an issue that we need to be tackling here, and why is it not as green as I see in Michigan, where I used to live? And then on the other hand, I usually blame my parents, because when I was super young, I remember it was New Year, we have this tradition, of course, presents for New Year, for Christmas, and all of that thing. But my mom had a different idea, and she took all of the toys that I wasn't really using anymore at that point. We cleaned them up. We put some gift wrap around them. We went and bought some extra toys, and then we went to the local orphanage, and we held a lottery for the children there. And every time a child would pick a number, they would get a gift, and we made sure everyone had gifts. But it was my job to then bring the gift to every child and kind of hand it over. And like, not subconsciously, I mean, very directly, my parents taught me that it's not about just receiving, but about giving back to your community and working on that aspect. So I think thanks to them and through the experience that I had, I started getting involved into more and more social and ecological projects.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned when I was in States, like giving back to your community is the best thing that you can actually do. And it doesn't have to be money. Most of the time, it's your time. It's your knowledge, it's your expertise, or whatever you're good at. So that is really a powerful thing, just to give back to community. Okay, so can you tell us something about how did you spend the last year, the COVID year? Although it's still COVID year. I mean, it's a year after, but we are still not. We don't see the end of the pandemic worldwide.
We're still in limbo. I say we have to reach 2020. It's not 2021, and we're still doing 2020 until we reset it. I have to say, quite interesting, because it was around that time when I decided to move back from the Netherlands. And unfortunately, it coincided with the start of the pandemic. So it was me rushing through the pandemic, trying to move back because I had quit my job. I had left my apartment. I'm like, I can't get stuck in the Netherlands without having a place to live or expend or income to spend. But I managed to move back, luckily. And after a bit of quarantine, I started focusing full time on AirCare and all of the things that I could do with the app. We went through a bunch of accelerator programs here locally. Thanks to the CWUS accelerator, we were able to learn more about our users. We were able to learn more about our business model. We were able to launch in over 40-ish countries, even more than that in the last year, which was a huge expansion for AirCare, especially in the US market, where we had, I think, over 200,000 users in a couple of weeks after launch. So it has been a very busy year, I must say. Our team has been very busy and not just launching new features, but also being part of a lot of pitch competitions. We were very lucky to win a bunch of prizes, especially from the UN. We were chosen as Europe's Young Innovators for 2020.
Congratulations! Congratulations! I saw the news. It's really respect.
Thank you, honestly. So yeah, it's been very busy, I must say. Like we found a lot of things to do during the pandemic, so we used our time wisely.
I know, because at the beginning of the pandemic, everyone realized that because the whole world stopped for a while, that there is a huge amount of time that we either are going to use in vain, or we are going to actually use it to improve something in our lives or in our businesses or whatever. So it gave us time to think or to rethink. I've listened to that TED talk that lasts maybe 6 to 7 minutes, but where did the idea for AirCare came from? Can you just tell us something about that? I mean, it's a great app. Now everyone can see what is the quality of air in their area, but where did you get that idea?
I think so. I was a student here locally in the university. It was winter 2014. Outside we had what we used to call then the smell of winter, which we didn't know was smog. That's what we used to call it with friends. It was ridiculous. But I was trying to teach myself.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we were also told it's a smell of the winter, and for me, for a long time, it has that romantic sound, like, oh, it's a smell of the winter. Who cares if we are suffocating ourselves? We didn't actually know that how harmful is it. So sorry, continue.
No, but it's totally right. I mean, I even remember, I don't know, I would go to winter vacations. I remember in Bulgaria, and I would be somewhere on a mountain up there, and then there would be a bunch of chimneys that were burning wood. And when I would smell that, I was like, oh, it smells like I'm on a winter vacation. No, that's bad. It's not. Oh, But but yeah, I was a student, and during one of these winters, I wanted to teach myself how to make Android apps because I used to be a web developer. But then I said, hey, phones are kicking off. Let's teach myself how to make apps. And I wanted to make an app that wasn't just something boring or regular. Let's make something that maybe is useful to, I don't know, a couple people. And that's when I stumbled upon the air quality data from our local Ministry of Ecology. They had published it on their website, but it was like this website, I think, was made in the 1990s and forgotten about. It's not that it's terrible, but it's hard to understand. It's not well made from the user experience aspect. So I located this data. It was open data, so you could use it for anything you want. I downloaded it. I ran some experiments on it. I honestly thought that I had a problem with my own code because it was telling me at some points the air was polluted 20 times over EU limits. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, I have to have a bug in my code. This just doesn't seem realistic. Unfortunately, it turned out to be true. So yes, I made an app for my friends and I published it on Facebook. It had 19 measuring stations throughout Macedonia, and that was basically it. It was a very simple, ugly looking app, but it did its job. Little did I know that it would come to this.
Well, you never know. Some great things happen when you don't expect, I don't know, huge success.
Totally. I mean,
you just hit the problem. You just hit the problem, and you solve problem for many of us to just follow what air quality is outside of our houses. But can you tell us something about? I think that the whole interview should, the whole TED Talk. I think people should really listen to it. But I have one question that is interesting for me. It's like we don't make any difference between data and information. We don't know how to use data, and data is everywhere. Like, you don't have to be a specially trained reader. They're everywhere. You just have to know how to find them and how to filter them and how to use them. So how is it in Macedonia? When I speak to my friends, I see that they don't make difference, and they are always complaining that there are limited resources when they want to do the research or whatever. So what's the situation in Macedonia with your friends?
I completely agree that we are still struggling with open data. So a lot of the data that we're supposed to have here, especially I'm talking about data that's coming from, let's say, the government sector, where it's supposed to be open, it's still not, or not to the extent that it could be usable. AirCare, for example, uses open data that is made in such a way that a computer can easily understand it. It can access it, it can process it, it can really easily work with it. So a computer can understand the language of that open data and transform it into information then people can use. But unfortunately, not all of this data is structured in that way. Some of the data that we get is in, I don't know, Microsoft Word documents, which is super hard for a computer program to understand.
To read, yeah.
Exactly. Or it would be scanned PDF file. I'm like, what are we supposed to do with scanned images? Now we have to do image recognition software stuff to even understand what's on there. So I've actually been helping the local government in the past couple of months, and showing them ways of how they can open this data and make it available to the public. So slowly but surely, we're trying to digitalize as much as possible and go forward with that. But it's a long and painstaking process, which a lot of entities need to be part of and understand why it's important to have this in the first place.
Is it hard to gather different stakeholders that are important to make those kind of decisions, and just like you show up, you are like a young man, and tell them something? So how do they accept you? Do they trust you when you say that you probably have a solution?
Depends on who I'm talking to. It's unfortunate that some people, sometimes you can really find people that you connect with. I worked with one of the previous ministers for informatics here, and he really was a kind of a hip person that understood technology, understood the importance of everything. A lot of cool projects came from that. But unfortunately, in some government institutions, we have people from, let's say, the old age of typewriters that still don't do anything digital. What are these ones and zeros kind of thing, which don't want to understand or don't try to understand the importance of technology, openness of data, and actual computer usability of data. Mm-hmm. So with those institutions, we really have a hard time trying to convince them why this is super important, to the point where the government actually had to create a little entity that helps us convince other government entities of why they should be opening up their data. So it really depends on who you're talking to. I'm hoping as time goes by and as more and more of these, let's say, old timers go into pension and younger people come and take their place, that they'll change their views and understand why this is important. Or in the end, we just make up a law that says you have to do this at the end of the day. That'll be all part battle in getting this open data.
I know. Sometimes I pray that once we enter European Union, Serbia enters European Union, that we are going to have to do certain things. Like, you know, the law is going to be above our I don't know, our local laws. So can you just my next question is in connection with your T-shirt. So can you show us your T-shirt?
The NASA one.
So how cool is it to work with NASA?
Well, unfortunately, I don't get to work with NASA. I'd love to, but I got a cool T-shirt from their space station from Florida. But no, we actually got to work with the European Space Agency.
Okay.
So with European NASA, which they don't have the coolest name, but it's like no, these guys are awesome because throughout the years they have been launching satellites that are tracking air pollution on the ground. So thanks to these satellites called the Sentinel project, so there's a bunch of Sentinel satellites, and the latest one that they launched was Sentinel 5P, I think. These satellites orbit the Earth and they report hourly measurements down to the ground, which then we can use to check out the air pollution on a bigger resolution than, let's say, personal sensors that are on the ground, but still be able to understand air pollution in areas that are not covered at all with sensors. And thanks to these, we can really track air pollution movement, let's say, throughout countries, and maybe a dust storm coming from Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan infiltrating the Balkans and things like that. So it's been really cool working with these guys and all of their open data that they have, and we just plan on continuing that cooperation going further.
No, that will be perfect. Fingers crossed. I mean, it's a respectable institution, and it's not just a good thing to have in your CV. Like, we work with European agency, but I suppose that there are great experts you can learn from, or the availability of data they are going to provide for you. So I think it's a good thing. So can you tell us something about this European Young Innovator Award? Where sometimes I'm confused when they say young. Do you need to be under 30, or do you need to be young as a company? Like you're a startup, so but you can have 50 years, but you can have a startup. So when they say young innovator, who is a young innovator?
Young innovator in that sense was people under 30. So your age needs to be under 30, as in, I guess, less experience or something to that matter. But yes, it was the age of under 30, which they had. Yeah, it was really cool because, so this award was given to us by the World Summit Awards, which is an entity under the UN or that was established by the UN. We applied there for, I think, the second time, actually. I think the first time we applied somewhere in 2018-ish. But we didn't get too far then because still AirCare was quite young. We weren't able to show the impact that we were making. But luckily, we reapplied again, thanks to local coordinators in 2020. And were able to not only fight our way up to the European Championship, where we were chosen as not just the best product, but the best pitch and the best impact. and hence awarded the European Young Innovators Award. But we're also able to go up to the global level and then win a prize on the global level as well, as one of the winners in the green energy and ecology category. So I don't know. It's for us, it's still the biggest award yet to be recognized by a global entity like the UN. For all the work that we've been trying to do throughout the years. And I think it's just proof that a small team from a relatively unknown Balkan country is able to do such a thing and worldwide, and borders did not stop us from getting out there. So I just really hope that people understand it is very possible to do that.
Oh, well, you're a great example, and probably some other. So I know very few people from this region, from this Balkan region that have international success. So everything is possible. We are limiting ourselves. We as persons, we are limiting ourselves, not the world. So how can we actually use modern technologies to improve our lives? Where can we use it? I mean, I'm a younger generation. You are young, but I don't see how we can show to our older citizens how can they benefit from using technologies.
Oh, I think there are a lot of ways that they can understand. I don't know. I take my grandma, for example. She's not only figured out how to use AirCare on her smartphone, she's figured out Viber and YouTube and stickers and oh my God. So I think if the older generation is just willing to learn, they can figure it out. But yes, we live in an era where technology is very accessible. Everybody has a smartphone these days. I don't know a person that does not have a smartphone. You can have a high-end, low-end, whatever, but you still have access to applications, to the internet. I think at this point we cannot imagine our lives without the internet, especially during COVID times.
Of course.
So showing the older generation the benefit of using these tools through something that's super simple. I don't know. For example, AirCare has a child mode, which the older generation seems to love here. It's a little thing that not a lot of people know, actually. It's in the menu. If you haven't seen it, just check out the menu from the side. We haven't marketed it at all. We have to work on that. But instead of displaying the circle with air quality information and different polluters and so on, it simplifies the interface for us. It was meant for the younger generation, but apparently everybody likes it. And it gives you a very just interesting little character we call Breezy. And Breezy changed his expression based on the air quality outside. And he would smile and laugh if it's good, or he would cough and kind of put a mask on himself if it's bad outside. And through a simplified version of technology, I think the older generation can get a handle on what it is all about, how to start using it, and then slowly advance towards the level that we find normal as the younger generation who grew up with technology.
Of course.
So start simple and then teach them into their ways.
Well, good for your grandma. Like my mom, she cannot. She rejects to learn how to use smartphone. She has smartphone, but she doesn't use Viber and she doesn't use any of the apps. Like if it's some great celebration, like somebody's birthday or Christmas or Easter, when I come to her place, she just gives me the phone and tells me, send them messages. Send messages to tens of people. But for me, like the last year showed us how technologies can actually help older people, like to book an appointment with the doctor or to do some basic stuff that, they cannot go outside of their houses. We have that restriction during the lockdown that people older than 65 years can actually not leave their houses. They're forbidden they're not allowed to go out. And by using some simple apps and technology that they could finish some work, they could, order food or order medicine or book an appointment with a doctor. So it can be very useful. But as you said, maybe we should simplify them for.
Totally. You can even twist it in the Balkan way. I remember when the lockdown first started, we had our house. How do you call Slava in English?
A patron celebration or something like that. I don't know.
But the Balkan people probably understand. It's like a holiday
Yes.
that we celebrate every year per family. And we had these. And of course, without Corona, a lot of family would come together. But now, because that was risky and we didn't want to risk anybody's health, what we did is family per family, we would sit in our own homes and then use video calls to actually celebrate something together, which was, again, a very interesting 21st century twist on
on a tradition.
But again, exactly. Showed the older generation, hey, look what we can still do in harder times thanks to technology.
I agree. That's perfect. We also did that. We had that small, my family celebration is on 14th of February. And we also had that Zoom Slava. So it was funny. Yeah, it was funny. It was really funny. Can you tell me something about what is your attitude towards educational system here in let's say Balkans? Like, we are similar probably in Serbia and in Macedonia, but you have the experience of somebody who went outside, who went somewhere abroad and had that different experience. So how is our educational system? What are we missing here? Or are we missing anything at all?
I think we are. Honestly, so I had the, let's call it the privilege to be able to study a couple of years in elementary school in the US and then come back and continue my education here. So I was able to compare the educational systems. And of course, that was a long time ago. So I can imagine that we've stepped it up a lot from then. But I think what really needs to happen here is, first of all, to have a human touch to education. Understand that a lot of these teachers that are there give a lot of their best, but also the system of accepting teachers needs to be, or the filtration system, let's say, of accepting teachers needs to be there, because as an educator, you need to have values that conform to what you try to teach children. Mm-hmm. For example, when I was in the States, and I was there for second grade, third grade, that time, we were taking it slow. The first couple of grades in elementary school was about learning how to get along, learning how to play, learning how to enjoy life, and then you would start slowly into the actual educational material. I remember here, I think it was first grade or something like that, where the math teacher would yell at me because I wasn't able to multiply two-digit numbers with two-digit numbers. I'm like, come on, I'm first grade, relax, will you? Okay, I may be exaggerating, I don't remember, but it was just the approach that the teachers had. I even remember that the teacher here locally would just love to yell at us. And once my mom came, and the teacher very proudly told my mom, was like, you know what? I come here and I would yell at the kids and then go back home and I would not feel like bad at all. I would feel like super happy. So I would just let off my anger to the kids at school and go back. Is that the right approach? Do you really want to do that?
Is that the way to develop critical thinking with the kids? Like, yell at them? Yeah.
I mean, so I think we have stuff to fix. And for me, I think the most important way of doing this is through knowledge exchange. So instead of being stuck in our own systems, try to learn from other systems and what they do. I would even suggest, as we have student transfers or student exchanges, why not have teacher exchanges? Have teachers from the US, for example, come and teach children here for, I don't know, 6 months, and then have our teachers go there, change places, learn what you can, and then be able to apply it and expand it to our local educational system. So I think there's more that we should be doing, especially on teaching children to be the best versions of themselves that they can be, given that, unfortunately, not always will that be the case from your own household. So the teachers have this extra weight on their shoulders to make sure that they put children in the right path. So it's going well, but we can always use the help and knowledge from outside.
From outside, yes, I agree. I mean, it's similar here, and basically our school system is like, you have correct answer and you have wrong answer and nothing in between. Like no critical thinking is, they don't try to develop critical thinking with kids. So what do you think about entrepreneurship? Like, are we born with that gene, or do we have a talent to be entrepreneurs, or is it something that is just developed, or it's something that can be it's a set of skills that you have to learn and implement?
Oof. I think it's a mix. I think it's a mix because you have to have, or to have a little bit of understanding about entrepreneurship and about business. I am not the most skilled business person ever out there, and I very openly say that. That's why I have a team with me, and I don't try to pretend that I know everything on my own. But you have to have the will and the passion to do these things. I remember, again, going way back to my childhood, in the US, I first understood the concept of a garage sale. And for me, that was quite new. I'm like, what is this garage sale thing? Suddenly you can become a business out of your own garage? What do you mean? Make money out of old stuff? And then I remember coming back here, and as a child, I would spend my summers organizing garage sales in front of my home. So I would just put up tables and take all of the old stuff from the basement and try to sell it to pass buyers. And I think that was kind of the first entrepreneurship experience I had. But you have to start having a will for this, I think, early on, and then continue to work with this. That is one maybe side of it. But the other side is having a great community to learn from. Mm-hmm. I am super happy to say that the startup community here locally has been growing rapidly. A lot more resources have become available for people, a lot more education, a lot more connections, a lot more events. And thanks to all of those, even if you are quite unfamiliar with the concept of entrepreneurship, you can really, really benefit and start getting into those waters, kind of dip your toes in the water of what it is to be an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. So I think thanks to communities like that all around the Balkans, not just here, a lot more people have access and understand of what does it mean to become an entrepreneur.
But it's similar in Serbia, and it started to develop maybe a decade ago, and it speeded up somewhere in the middle of 2010. So it's 2015, everything speed up, and then we had this last year that maybe stopped that kind of community gatherings and networking nights and something like that, but still most of them are transferred to online. But I really think it takes time to develop entrepreneurial spirit in regions like ours, like in Serbia or in Macedonia. We are not that open. We are not that ready to make a mistake, to learn from our mistakes. So I don't know, do you agree with me, but we have that negative attitude towards failure. Like, what is failure? Have you ever failed? Like you said you've done some really amazing stuff, like the AirCare app. You worked for Booking.com. So have you ever had failures, problems?
No, I'm perfect. I never go wrong. I'm always right. No, of course.
But did you make any mistake? Did you try to develop an app and it turned out to be a waste of time?
So I'm not sure how the camera is picking this up, but I've developed 20 apps before AirCare. So bravo. 20 apps that had almost zero success to the point where you actually get the one that works. So 20 apps have, let's label them a failure, because they technically were. They didn't hit the audience where they should have, until you get to the right thing. And those 20 failures did not discourage me, saying, hey, you know what, you suck at making apps, stop making apps. No, that's not what failures are, because failures aren't, I hate the word failures because it's not failure. That's why I say it's a learning opportunity. Mm-hmm. You learn what went wrong and how you can improve going forward. Booking wasn't the first company that I applied to. I applied to many other companies. I tried to get into MIT. I got rejected. I tried to get into Uber. I got rejected. I tried to get into Nova High School, which is here the kind of the top private high schools here. I got rejected. So I tried to apply to all of these places. And of course, you would get rejected for one reason or the other, but you would learn. like, okay, this didn't work. How can I improve next time? And over the course of time, you would find what we call success. So the culture towards failure should really be accepted as it's not failure, it's just learning. You're developing, you're figuring things out as you go along. If you sit there and try to come up with the best idea and don't try anything else, chances are you're never going to come up with it. So instead of going out, trying, failing, okay, next, how can I change? How can I pivot? Is when you get to something that works. So I think there's a lot of failure in my past, even with AirCare. There's been a lot of options that we've tried and had to delete from the app because it didn't work. So it's not that it was a one-shot wonder, but it just takes time and will.
And dedication. I will return to that TED Talk, and it from my perspective, this AirCare, you're like a patriot of the world. You know, you're saving the planet, or you're saving a person's life by saying, okay, don't go out. This is poisonous. So for me, that was my impression. Like, he's the patriot of the world. He's not the local patriot. He's the patriot of the world. Perfect. So you used one word at the beginning of our conversation, to tackle. Are you more of do you like to tackle, or do you like to solve the problem, or where do you stand? I don't know if I'm clear enough, but am I clear enough? Do you understand me?
Well, and let me try to answer it, and you'll see if I
okay.
So locally, when I come back here, for example, I used to come back a lot from the Netherlands back home. A lot of people would say, hey, why do you like this place so much? There's a lot of problems. And I would say, no, I don't see problems. I see opportunities. I see opportunities to make things better. We can see everything through a negative filter. We can say everything's a problem, everything's bad, or we can say, and if we see a problem, like, okay, this is bad, and that's where the conversation kind of stops. If we say this is an opportunity to make something better, is where the conversation opens up and says, okay, how? What can we do to make these things better? So I think if it's a change of perspective, change of mindset, where you say, I'm going to look at this from an opportunity perspective, only then can you start really thinking about how you can solve certain issues and certain problems. So I like to say that I look at opportunities and not problems.
Okay, you answered my question. Thank you.
Good, I got it.
No, because if you want to tackle, then you need the strong structure, and you need time, and some things are they have to be done quickly. You know, you need to solve the problem. You don't have time to test it too much or whatever. So what is your attitude or opinion about blue, green, and circular economy? So circular economy is something that is becoming quite popular here in Serbia. I don't know what's the thing, how is it in Macedonia, but what do you think about these three? I don't know. For me, they're very similar and interconnected, but have their characteristics. But what do you think about these three types of economies?
I'll be honest, I've never heard of a blue economy, so I'm not 100% sure what that is.
Well, it's like a ancestor of a green economy. So it's something using natural resources, and it's not like similar to circular. Circular needs to reuse the yes. So blue and green are very similar.
Got it. Well, I think so. Personally, I love that. Of course, as an eco-activist, you have to love something economy that figures out ways of not harming the environment, harvesting what is there, and giving back and making sure that everything's recyclable. It's, I think, still hard for people to understand the importance of this, because when you tell people, hey, look, I don't know, you've bought this, I don't know, this milk carton, and now you have to recycle it. They'll say, what change does it make? I'll put it in the recycle bin or not. I don't see a change outside. Tomorrow I get up, it's the same tree, it's the same building, it's the same sky. I didn't really make an impact. And until people start to see or realize the impact that they're making with these circular green economies, I think we're still going to have trouble in convincing people to understand, hey, look, this is important. We need to look at businesses that are able to recycle, reuse, redo everything. We need to look at natural resources and stop burning coal and to get fire. And we need to do this before it's too late. And this is usually what I stress to people. It's really hard for people to understand how much we are harming the planet right now and how important it is to switch now, not tomorrow, not next week, today, actually yesterday. Yesterday gone, today, because the longer we wait, the bigger the impact this will be on the planet. And instead of thinking only in profit terms, only in revenue, only in how can my investors get as much money as possible, maybe we should also think about the eco and green impact that our business might have on the planet going forward. Usually when AirCare pitches to investors, we have two things. One, yes, we ask for cash injection to expand teams and our processes, but we also say we're looking for a partner with eco connections and a passion for clean air. We only want to work with people that share our vision and passion. And usually when I tell investors and when they ask, like, why should we invest in AirCare? I'm like, well, look, you can invest in AirCare and we can guarantee you that you'll get your money back, maybe not make you the richest people ever, but we will make sure that you are there to live long enough to spend all of your money that you've made. If you don't invest in green and eco solutions, then chances are you're not going to be able to spend all your money by the time everything blows up. It's a pessimistic view. Not going to go
but it's a perfect because you just basically hit the ego spot. You know, everyone wants to live long enough to spend their money. Yeah,
you have to look at the solution that'll help you live long enough to spend all your money. Otherwise, what are you going to do with it?
Is it easy to find investors in Macedonia, or do you go to some other markets to find to look for investors?
I definitely go outside. I think locally we're still struggling with investment. We have a couple of accelerators which are starting up now, but investments are really taking a slow time to happen. Even talks about investments are taking super slow to happen. So I would say that locally we still have a problem on our hands with that. We have less resources about learning how to figure out investment, where to get investment, especially as a company. So we use a lot of these accelerators or impact hubs to help us understand the places where we can locate investors and how to pitch to investors. Because again, I can go there and as an eco-activist, I can pitch our story, but at the end of the day, the investor is more interested in about the business model, the sustainability, the growth, the market size, and knowing all this information, how to correctly present it to an investor outside is super important. And I think this is where we have enough material here to learn, but unfortunately there's not a lot of investors locally, at least in Macedonia here. So we have to go outside and look, I don't know, to the region or maybe to Europe or even Silicon Valley.
Well, I think that you're a good candidate for that.
I hope so too. I think so too. That's why we ask for investors. But and maybe to go back to some of the viewers who are or listeners who are thinking of starting their own company, I hear this a lot in the Balkans, and it really annoys me. They would say, "Hey, look, I want to start a business. I have this great idea. Where can I get investment?" I'm like, why do you rush to get investment from day one? Usually for the majority, especially in tech business ideas, you do not need investment in day one. There is no investment, like zero money needed. If you need investment in day one, then you're going to have a hard time on your hands starting off a business. When you talk about tech, you find co-founders, which are your CTO, for example, someone who's in technology. You make a minimum viable product, an MVP of whatever you're trying to do. You put it on the market, you see if it bites, you start making a little bit of money, and then you would go to investors and say, hey, look, we have something that would work. AirCare right now is super sustainable. We're able to pay off all our bills and pay our team without getting investment from anywhere, which puts us in a much better position when we start to negotiate. So having that first step and not rushing to look for an investment from day one is super important. And I want a lot of people to understand that you don't have to do that.
Yes, you need a computer and a stable internet connection to start.
Exactly.
An idea. And you have to have idea. Okay, thank you. We came to an end of our conversation. Thank you for your time. I really enjoyed. I haven't laughed this much during the interview. I don't know for months now. So I learned a lot from you. Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I honestly appreciate it, and thank you for your work on this topic, because I think it's much needed, especially in our region. So I honestly appreciate that.
Thank you. Good people of the world, you were listening and watching to Mondopreneur podcast. You can always follow us on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and listen to us on almost all audio platforms that are there, and you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. So stay good, stay in good health, and see you in a week.